As you all know, every week we have on jazz and jazz crossover artists. We've had on amazing artists on our show. We had on just recently, we had on Eric Roberson, we've had on Dwelle, we've had Mesa, we've had Brian Culbertson, we've had Pieces of a Dream, Curtis Harmon. I can go on and on. And we have just a terrific. The people that we've had on this show are some of the greatest people you'll find performing jazz and any kind of jazz fusion these days. We've had Billy Ocean, Annie Lennox, just some great legendary vocalists and instrumentalists. And tonight I have a special treat for you. I want to tell you about our special guest. Okay, she's an award-winning artist, recording artist, a classically trained musician, a flautist, a band leader, a radio personality, and a record label owner. She has recorded 6 LPs and has had 9 consecutive Billboard Top 10 hits, which is extraordinary. So everybody, please welcome the talented and beautiful Ragan Whiteside. Ragan, hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing fine. I was just bragging about you.
Hi.
and all your accomplishments, So I want to welcome you back. You've been on the Jazz Power Hour before, and I know you have some new releases, so I wanted to have you back on and just start to talk about other things with you about the world of music that you live in. All right. So one of the things I like to do, I want to talk about some of your milestones and some of the breakthrough moments you've had since you were on last time. And I want to thank you one more time for being here. The first thing I do with any artist is I ask them to tell everybody what's going on, what's cooking. And by the way, just before you do, I'm sorry to interrupt myself, but before you do, I want to tell everybody, if you want to get more background on Ragan, when Ragan was on last time on the Power Hour, if you go to my station, sourceradio.com, or you go to Facebook Source Radio, or you go to YouTube Source Radio, you'll find Ragan's earlier interview, and you can watch it recorded live video, streaming video, and you can get the background that we're not going to cover again tonight. We're going to talk about other things. So please, if you want to see Ragan and learn more about her, please go to sourceradio.com and watch the previous artists. There's a link, and you'll be able to watch the whole thing. So let me get back to you and ask you, what's cooking? What's going on?
Oh boy, it seems like 2023 just kind of exploded. It actually started earlier in the fall of 22. I was nominated for and won a Jazz Music Award. Then I was nominated for an NAACP Image Award, and everything just kind of exploded after that. It was so I've been doing a lot of shows. I actually have a show this weekend at Middle C in Charlotte, North Carolina, and after that we're going to be in South Carolina at Shay's Lounge, and then we're heading out to the West Coast for the Gardena Jazz Festival in LA. So it's really picking up, and it's so much fun, and it's so excited. Oh, and I skipped. We just did Winston-Salem Jazz Series and the Hartford Festival, Greater Hartford Festival of Jazz this past weekend. So it's been a whirlwind, and it's fun, and I'm loving it.
Wonderful. What about new music? You have anything in the hopper?
Oh yes. We are working on this is my 7th album.
It's your 7th.
Yeah. And we're writing a lot and recording, and it'll be out next year.
Wonderful. That's great. And you have some new releases we're going to play tonight, right?
Yes.
You're going to play some of your music tonight also. Well, look, the things you've accomplished are remarkable, and that's why I wanted to have you back on. And one of the things which I don't see often are female instrumentalists that have had long careers. Yeah, and you've had a marvelous career, and we're going to talk a little bit about that a little bit later. But what I want to get to is something that I, that I think, and you can correct me because you're the professional here when it comes to the flute, but I want to talk about some of the great flute players that started to come out in the 1960s and 70s. One of them was Jean-Pierre Rampal. And for me, when I heard Rampal starting to play some jazz and some pop music, it was just remarkable to me. And Rampal made the flute popular again. It hadn't been popular as a lead instrument since the 1700s. And I mean, literally, it was not a lead instrument. He made it a lead instrument again, and he influenced James Galloway, who studied under Rampal. And James Galloway is probably considered, you can tell me too if I'm wrong, the greatest, if not one of the greatest flute players ever.
Yeah.
And that whole period of time, there was an itinerant jazz musician and rock musician who started with the guitar, but then when he heard Eric Clapton, he gave the guitar up and he picked up the flute. His name was Ian Anderson. He's known from Jethro Tull. He was the lead singer and lead instrumentalist of Jethro Tull. And then there was Bobby Humphrey, who became in the 1970s the first female flute-playing instrumentalist to be to have a record contract with Blue Note Records. So the flute exploded in the 1970s. It just came out of nowhere, and it wasn't part of rock or jazz. It was only classical, and it was buried in the orchestra. It was not a lead instrument. So, with that background, everything I've just laid out, did these people influence you? With this part of your decision to become a flute player, a flautist?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I would say Ron Paul was probably one of my first influences. My first private teacher, Joe Pichatelli, is watching. He was a big fan of his, and his name came up quite a bit in terms of having me listen to the way he attacked a certain phrase or whatever, and so this is, as I was learning classical music, he was definitely very present and in the mix, and then also growing up, it was Dave Valentine.
Yes.
A lot of with the Latin jazz. I grew up in New York, and he's he was Mr. Bronx, so he was very accessible, and you can see him everywhere. So he was definitely an influence. And then of course, I'm female, I'm Black, and I play the flute. So of course, Bobby Humphrey's name is going to come up all over the place. And so they're like, "Oh, you're going to be just like Bobby Humphrey," and I'm like 8, and I'm just like, what? I'm not sure who, but and of course, I'm 8, and so then I, went on and did my homework, and I said, "Oh, okay, yes, I'm going to be like Bobby. There it is."
So I guess the only missing piece for me here is, were you interested in the flute before you heard Rampal or Bobby Humphrey or James Galloway, or did they make you think I want to be a flutist? Which one came first? A chicken egg question.
Growing up, I always liked playing instruments and anything I could really get my hands on. But when I started playing the flute, it wasn't my first choice. So I would have to say that playing the flute kind of almost happened by accident, not by accident, but it was not something that I immediately pursued because of something that I heard. It was the instrument that was left when the band teacher was coming around and recruiting for the band. And so I took it kind of begrudgingly. I really didn't want to play it, but I was like, it's still an instrument. And it took me a week to get a sound out. But then I started, then I got the sound, and then I started to like it. I started getting good at it, and then I started listening to other flautists.
The reason I asked you is it's kind of funny. I think it's Marquil Jordan. I could be wrong, but he's a trombone player. I think it's Marquil, but my mind may be slipping right now. But he told his story similar to yours. He tried out the band, and then when the band leader, the teacher asked him, "What do you want to play?" He said, "Guitar." And he said, "No, we don't have any more guitars. It's already taken." And he said, "Well, I'll play the drums." "No, we already have a drummer." Then he said, "Well, what's left?" He said, "The trombone." He said, "Okay." And that's how he became a trombone player. It was just, that was all that was left. And now I believe it's him. And I don't want to, he's been on my show. I feel embarrassed, but my brain is slipping on this one. I think it was him, but he tells his story. And, similar to you, it wasn't your first choice, but there's something about an instrument and a person that fits.
Yeah. And I didn't know that was going to be my instrument. I really didn't, because I have played everything, and I mean everything. Maybe not the didgeridoo, but
who's your favorite? I'm sorry. Go ahead. I can use it. Yeah. Who's your favorite flute player today?
There are many. I mean, Hubert Laws.
Excuse me. Are they all in jazz, or some are classical?
Some are. I mean, it kind of runs the gamut. I think Ian Anderson is great. There's just so many people out here. Althea Renee, she has her own style. Kim Scott, she's doing her thing. Everybody has Najee.
Oh,
Najee. He was one of the people that really made me want to pursue a solo career in jazz. I listened to his first album. It came out when I was in college, and I used to try to just play all these licks and everything, and I'm doing this, while I'm in conservatory. Everybody else is, busting out Rachmaninoff on the violin, and I'm like, these Najee licks. I shouldn't, but yeah.
Who do you think is your competition today? Can you name anybody?
Everybody's my competition. Everybody.
I'm talking about flute players. I'm talking about flute players.
No, that's what I'm saying. If you play the flute, you are my competition. But it's
really,
everybody has a way of playing that's going to be uniquely them, right? And they are going to relate and connect with an audience. Now, is that going to be my audience? I don't know. But, everybody's out here, everybody's doing their thing. And, there's going to be flute players that I can't do what they do. And there's going to be, and vice versa. They can't do what I do. So, everybody is out here, you're competing, but really you're competing against yourself, So everybody is, I have so much respect for, everybody that's out here right now. It's,
it reminds me of something my mother had told me when I was young. She said, "Don't care what anybody says about you as long as they say something."
Yeah.
So having your competitors out there, they're only bringing attention to the flute, which is good for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It can't hurt at all. Yeah. Let me ask you another kind of question. What made you decide to play jazz on the flute? You could have been a classical flute player. Why jazz?
I didn't want to play classical music anymore. It conservatory is it's a tough mistress, and it'll definitely make you see the truth in yourself, and it's like my truth was not on the page. My truth was, although don't get me wrong, the flute and the oboe have the best seats in the orchestra.
That's what seats.
Yeah. You're talking about like that is the ultimate surround sound, and I used to love it. And any chance I get today, if I get a chance to do it, I'm gonna go sit in that orchestra just because especially if you're playing certain pieces like the planets or something. It's like, oh, come on, So in that respect, I still dig it, but my heart wasn't in it as much as it needed to be in order to get through the auditions. It's a very, very tough road to travel. And so, you know, to get into an orchestra. And so I just, with my heart not being in it on that level, I needed to find something else to do. And I played a lot of different things afterwards, but it wasn't until I saw like Bob Baldwin and Marion Meadows do this show,
Yeah.
August Blue Light in Scarsdale, New York. I don't know if that club is still there, but I was sitting right up front and I was like, nope, this is it. This is what I want to do. And the rest is history.
Wow, that's terrific. You know, I'm going to give away my age, but like you, when you saw them and you said that's what you want to do, I was at, someone took me when I was 11 years old or 10 years old to the Apollo Theater, and I saw the great rock and roll show with Buddy Holly and Chuck Berry and Jerry Lee Lewis, and after that I was hooked on rock and roll, hooked. You know, I couldn't get enough. So sometimes, you know, it's vicarious and it's serendipitous. You go ahead and you go to see, you know, Mary Meadows, and suddenly that's what I want to do. And you didn't know that before.
No. I mean, you know, it's something that I, you know, kind of dabbled in, but never really, you know, went, yeah, I'm gonna do this. I just did it because I need a break from all this Bach, you know. So, you know, but that day, that fateful day.
Yeah, well, you know, that's the way it is. You know, I've had so many artists on, and most of the artists will tell me about a seminal moment when lightning struck, you know, and they realized this is who I am. You know?
Yeah.
And, you know, it's not developmental often. It's just sudden. It's very sudden. It just hits you. Yeah. Well, let's play some of your music. I want to start off playing and you can give us a little, you know, the backstory. I want to start off by playing Thrill Ride. And why don't you tell everybody about Thrill Ride, because this has been an award-winning production for you. So why don't you tell everybody about it?
Yeah, so Thrill Ride is the title cut off of my my album, Thrill Ride. And it was one of those songs, my husband, Dennis Johnson, was working on it, and he was writing it, and he had this track, and he was in this turnaround, and it was so syncopated, and I was just like, wow, okay, we gotta do something with this. And so I started writing the melody, and it just came together, and it was just so much. It was thrilling just recording it. It was so much fun, and we did a video with it too, which was also a lot of fun.
Well, you know, let me before I was just going to play this song, but before I do, let me pick up on something you said. You know, you're very fortunate because your husband is a super talented guy, super talented. And, you know, how convenient could that be?
Yeah. Well, you know, I planned it that way. You know, no, I'm kidding. But
why don't you tell us about a couple of the other members of your team that were really responsible for songwriting and Thrill Ride? Who else is on your team?
Oh yeah, so Bob Baldwin, of course, he's been my mentor.
I was waiting for that.
Yeah.
Excuse me. How'd you strike up a relationship with Baldwin?
You know, we kind of knew each other a long time ago because he was friends with my friend's dad, right? So I used to see him, you know, and they were, you know, my friend's dad was a guitar player. And so, you know, they used to hang out a lot, you know, and I was like 10. And so I was just like, oh, yeah, there's that dude, whatever, you know. But then fast forward to that concert, it was him and Marion and a whole bunch of cats. And it was after that concert, I walked up to him and reintroduced myself as an adult. And we talked for a while. I asked him, you know, how, you know, what kind of advice he had for me for making the transition from classical to jazz. And we talked for a good hour. And the next thing I know, he invited me to a session that he was doing with Dennis. And I ended up playing on this jingle for CD 101.9, which was the smooth jazz station in New York at the time. And so it just kind of developed from there. You know, he really he really, really helped me make that transition, musically. Basically breaking every single rule that had just been drilled into me for years. So, yeah.
Yeah, we again, I'm going to use the word serendipitous. Here comes this person
Mm-hmm.
who couldn't be a better mentor at the stage that you were at.
Yeah.
It just, all the planets align sometimes, and wonderful things happen like that.
Mm-hmm.
So let me play your song now. Is there anything else you want to tell us about it before I play it?
We have Rich Harrison on drums, Phil Hamilton on guitar. I think that's it for personnel on that too.
Terrific. All right. Well, here it is. It's one of my favorite songs. Two of the three songs that we're going to play tonight, I've listened to at least 100 times. This is one of them. So everybody enjoy. great, phenomenal.
Thank you. I'm glad you like it.
Uh, I love it. I've heard it so many times over and over again. You know, I have a question about this. When you have a song like this and you go to perform live,
Mm.
do you play it the same way every time?
No, no. You know, there are certain things. I mean, you know, the verse is the verse, the chorus is the chorus. Certain aspects of the solo might stay the same, but we try to stay as flexible as possible because sometimes something will happen and then you just got to roll with it. So, you know.
Well, the reason, yeah, part of the reason I'm asking, I've been a Grateful Dead fan for years, and they never played the same song twice at any concert. Never. You know, so when they played the song, they just never played it the same way. And everybody used to go to see how they're going to play it this time. So, you know, sometimes, you know, when you perform and you just decide to go with it, you know, your audience really appreciates it sometimes because they hear something they haven't heard before. But it's familiar. They just haven't heard it that way.
Right, right.
Yeah, but that's a beautiful track. I mean, it really is. You know, the way I describe the music that you do, and this is, again, always please, if I'm going off track, you tell me. I describe you, concerning you playing the flute, the music, I describe it as being very thick. The orchestration is really beautiful, you know, behind you as the lead instrumentalist. Do you do the charting and the scoring, you know, for your compositions? Are you the person responsible for the orchestration?
The orchestration is a lot of it is Dennis and Bob, and you know, and I throw my ideas in it as well. Now, when we're talking about the actual scoring, sometimes I do my own charts, sometimes I on them off because you know it's kind of a pain. But but yeah, you know, Bob and Dennis both like this wall of sound. And
I was going to mention that for the Philly sound.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, when we're recording something, I remember like years ago, before computers were as powerful as they are now, they used to choke out computers left and right. They would just choke it out. It would be like 150 tracks, and it just, and the computer was like, I can't keep it together. But yeah.
No, I know that's why I was calling it thick. It really is the wall of sound, you know, that's in so much of the instrumentation that you do, and it's, you know, it's just beautiful. It's beautifully orchestrated, not just beautifully composed. It's both, and you know, so obviously, you know, part of being a successful instrumentalist is having a team, you know, that can, you know, make the music so much richer. You know, and you don't. It's hard, you know. To me, it's hard for a songwriter to always hear everything. You know, I was talking to Brian Culbertson about this, and you know, he said, you know, he told me he can compose a track. He can then have the track laid out. He can have, you know, have it scored and charted, and then after it's all said and done, he listens to it and he says, "Oh my God, I need a horn there." And before it's and before it's released, he'll go back and put the horn in because, you know, because he's trying to create a particular sound, and you don't always hear it, you know, when you're playing it and creating it, you know. But you have a good team. I kind of wanted you to mention that team, so that's wonderful. When you compose a song, do you compose it for yourself, or do you compose it for your fans? How do you sit down and write?
I'm a very selfish writer, I have to say. Because a lot of the time I'm just sitting down to write just because I enjoy doing it, and it just gives me so much just satisfaction when something comes together like that, and you know, and it's feeling good to me and everything, and it's like, oh well, is it commercial enough, or is it, you know, can it become commercial enough to actually be released? And you know, so, but generally I'm just sitting down just to write for myself, and then, you know, everything else comes later.
Is that how you engage your audience, through yourself? I mean, in other words, are you there to write for them, or are you there to bring them something that's so meaningful to you? I mean, how do you engage them? What's the process?
Yeah, I write something that makes me happy, and if it makes me happy, maybe it'll make somebody else happy. You know, like I like feel good music, you know, and if it makes me feel good, somebody else somewhere is gonna make them feel good too. You know, it might not be everybody, it might not be everybody's cup of tea, but somebody's gonna like it. So
That's the best way to write. You know, who does your mixing and mastering?
Dennis does the mixing, and then we have Matt Noble out of Bronxville, New York, who masters it.
Wonderful. Yeah, I know who that is. You have a great team working for you.
They're awesome.
You know, when you look around the contemporary scene and you look at, you know, what's coming out, what's new, what's exciting, what's interesting. Have you heard anything recently? Any song that you said, "Wow," that it just hit you, and why?
You know what? The last song that really just knocked me out was Cinco Cinco Seis by 480 East.
I don't know that.
Oh, see, I'm a house head from way back, and they do like a house jazz kind of thing, and this had a Latin house jazz vibe, and it had this crazy flute solo, and I was just and when I listened to it, I just had to stop. I had to stop. It's one of my favorite tunes. I've probably listened to it about 1,000 times, but and it was great to be able to perform it with them on a couple of different shows. So it was yeah, that tune was crazy.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. You know, it doesn't have to be a flute. You just kind of survey the music scene to see what's going on, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of folks out here doing some really cool things. You know, Brooke Alford, she's new. She plays violin, and Rebecca Jade, she's a vocalist. She's doing some pretty cool stuff. Marcus Anderson, he's doing a lot of. I mean, everybody out here, they're like swinging for the fences, and it shows.
You know, I mean, there's a couple of people that are going to be coming up on my show. You may know. There's a wonderful vocalist named Cecily. I don't know if you know Cecily. She's in DC, and there's also another one, Samara Joy. And you know, there's some young talent they're going back, and they're going back to old school music, and they're introducing old school music to a whole younger generation now. And the younger generation, they're hungry for the kind of music. You know, you must know this. There's a jazz revolution going on in the UK right now, and there's so many young jazz virtuosos who are doing jazz, hip hop, jazz, Afrobeat, but they're basically jazz players. They don't want to do hip hop. They don't want to do rap. They don't want to do urban. They want to do jazz, and they do jazz crossover. You know, but there's a slew of them. I wish I could remember the names right now of all of them, but I've been talking with some of them, and you know, it usually happens there first, then it comes here.
Yeah, true. That is very true.
Yeah, so you know that's so jazz is making a comeback, so a big time comeback. So at least I think so.
Oh, that's great. I'm not mad at it.
Yeah, exactly. You know, if you can have somebody, here's a question I wanted to ask you. If you could tag along with any songwriter, musician, or vocalist for a whole month, just tag along with them and be a fly on the wall, who would it be? A songwriter, a musician, or a vocalist?
Oh boy. They have to be alive?
Well, tagging along will make it a lot easier.
I mean, okay. For a whole month.
For a whole month.
Stevie Wonder.
Good choice. Good choice.
Yeah, can't go wrong there.
Yeah. Some of the answers I get, I've asked this to a few of the artists that come on my show, and you know, some of the answers that I get just shock me. Obviously, Stevie Wonder's always been on my bucket list. He's one of the people I'd love to be able to sit down with and just talk to. But that's a good choice. Why Stevie Wonder? I'm just curious. Why would you want to follow? What is it about him? Is it his playing, his songwriting? Which is it, or everything?
It's everything. I mean, obviously his songwriting is just insane from, I mean, his whole career. I mean, he's, was it 40, 50, 60 years
Yeah.
worth of music that he's written, and for other people. And, you know, his chords, it's hard, make no mistake, it's hard to play over a Stevie tune. And don't let them change up the chord on the key on you, and then you're really in trouble. But you know, it's very intricate, but in a very accessible kind of way, and it just gets all up in your spirit. And so and he's just, I mean, he's phenomenal.
Yeah, you know, I remember I mean, I'm dating myself as a kid, you know, when Fingertips Part 2 came out, he was 13 years old when he composed and played that.
Mm.
You know, that was his first big hit on AM radio. It wasn't even FM, I don't think. You know, but that was his first hit. 13 years old, Fingertips Part 2. I'll never forget it. And then he came out with the Key of G, that wonderful album.
Mm-hmm.
That, you know, how often do you have, you know, 10 songs being hits on one album?
Yeah.
You know, he did. You know, I had on. This is really kind of interesting. I had on after Otis Redding passed away. There was a new lead singer for the Bar-Kays, and I had him on the show, and he told me, I didn't know the Bar-Kays had 20 number 2 hits. I said, why always number 2? And he said, at the time, he said Michael Jackson. He said they couldn't break through with 20 number 2s. They couldn't break through one time. Michael Jackson.
Well, I guess if it's going to be somebody, you know.
Yeah, well, you know, that's why I'm thinking Stevie Wonder's a great choice. You know, let's talk about transitions in music, and I want to, you know, again, I want to just talk about some other people and set this up for you so you can talk about your own music and your own career. You know, Taylor Swift made a huge genre jump going from pop, which, you know, with her album 1989, where she just totally transitioned away from country. And
right.
She had been a country singer, and suddenly she's doing pop, and country audience wasn't happy about it, but she's made it work for her, and it started a whole other career for her. And, you know, then there's the lead singer for the Hootie and the Blowfish, Darius Rucker. Darius Rucker left doing rock and went to country, so he went the other way from Taylor Swift. You know, and you know, and then there's a lot of, you know, female artists also who, you know, like Fergie, and she was with Wild Orchid, a sexy '90s pop band, and she left them and went to hip hop and started playing with the Black Eyed Peas. You know, so, you know, genre shifting can be very successful for people, but it's sometimes hard for artists to make the transition. So I guess my question to you after that setup, have you ever thought about this as transitioning into a different genre? You know, maybe going from jazz to maybe going to some gospel or country. Has it ever crossed your mind, or isn't it something that's in the cards for you?
Yeah, it definitely crosses my mind. I mean, you know, just as a musician, you want to grow. And during the years where I was like paying a lot of dues, I played in a lot of different genres. And actually the most fun for me was rock. You know, it was something, you know, I could get my Ian Anderson on, and it was fun. So, you know, I never want to limit myself. You know, I will play whatever strikes me to play at that moment. So if the opportunity presents itself, you know, and it feels good, yeah, you know.
Have you thought of collaborating with other artists outside of the jazz world?
Oh, sure. I would love to. You know, I mean, there's a lot of different artists out here. I mean, look, honestly, if I could do a collaboration with Aerosmith, that would be the bomb, you know.
Wow.
You know, or, you know, I mean, there are so many people, very uber talented people out here that you know, Billie Eilish, you know, she's,
oh, I love Billie Eilish. Yeah.
You know,
what a talent.
So yeah, I'm always open. If it feels good, I'm going to do it.
But you haven't done it yet. You haven't.
The opportunity hasn't presented itself yet. I'm open to it though. Whoever's watching, I'm open.
I was thinking about this. I was going to talk to you after the show about this. I've had Brian Culberson on my show, and we got along well. And I thought a collaboration between you and Brian would be just awesome. I thought that would be. He plays 12 different instruments.
I know, and he plays a really mean trombone too.
Doesn't he?
Yes.
Yes. That guy is really. I mean, he is really good. So I was thinking while I was preparing for the interview tonight, boy, you two should definitely do something together. It would just be killer. Anyway, well, look, I guess what I want to ask you next, you've done 6 LPs, so you've done at least 60 songs, something close to that.
Yeah, close.
Tell me your favorite and why.
You know what? That's hard. That's like saying what's your favorite kid. Every song has a place in my heart. All the albums were created at different points in my life. I mean, we got before marriage, just got married, just after, we got married. Now we have a kid. Now we have 2 kids, and everything is just it's just moving along. And so every single phase of my life is really captured in the feeling of the album. So I can't pick one that's my favorite.
Oh, thanks a lot for that one. Yeah, but it's interesting. I was part of this conversation. I was going to ask you, when you're a vocalist exclusively, it's easy to name your songs because it's based on the lyrics.
Right.
When you're an instrumentalist, how do you name your songs?
It's based on a feeling, the vibe of the room while you're, making music.
Huh. So it just comes to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now the names of the album, that is probably done at the absolute last minute before we have to go to press. So
you usually name it after one of the lead song? Is that how you usually name your?
No, actually, I think this was probably this was probably the second album that has been the name of a song. Because we did it once with you know what? No. We have done this many times. I'm thinking Evolve, that was a song on the album. Quantum Drive was a song on the album. And Thrill Ride. But the other 3, no.
Okay, but half of them named after a song. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
One of the things I wanted to mention, Ragan, and this was just kind of a surprise to me. I started going back and listening to a lot of your music, and I couldn't find many vocals that you've done. I even texted you and said, "What am I missing? I know you've done vocals, but I can't find them." Then you pointed me to one where you had a pianist who was accompanying you as featured on the song. And I know that she does vocals too. I thought it was her vocals. They were excellent. They were yours. What song was that?
That was Remind Me.
Remind Me. Remind me of the song. Yeah. But your voice is beautiful. Why is there a reason why you don't do more vocals?
No. Just it just kind of happens that way. We're gonna have more vocals on this new album. But when you're trying to get as much radio airplay as possible, especially commercial, there was a period of time where they were really kind of shying away from a song that had vocals on it. They would actually come back to you and say, "Hey, do you have a full instrumental version of this song?" And so, so at that point, vocals were like, oh, "Okay, we'll put those here, we'll save them, whatever." So, we kind of. But now it seems like they're opening up a little bit. Instrumental music is still the majority, but they are allowing vocals through. So we're gonna put a few more on the next album.
Good, because the part of the reason especially in jazz, if you have vocals in English and you're playing it in Lithuania, they're not going to understand the words, and it can hurt the sales, but if it's purely instrumental, everybody understands the language,
Mhm.
and it makes it much more universal, and
Right, right.
marketing becomes easier.
Very
But now they are starting to open up, and in jazz you're finding a lot more vocals than ever before.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think it's a great thing. Okay, I want to play another one of your songs now,
Mhm.
and maybe you can tell everybody a little backstory on Off the Cuff.
Oh, off the cuff. It was literally off the cuff. It was a song that Dennis had this track laying around that he had actually written for somebody else. And he pulled it up and he was like, that's kind of messing with it. Maybe, bring it up to date because it was an older song. And he was like, it's not really your style. And I said, but I like it. No, it's not. And then I was like, no, check this out. So I put this melody on top of it. Like, I mean, it was literally just off the cuff. I was sitting there, had my flute in my hand, and I just played. And he was like, okay, get in the booth right now. So, and that was one of those songs that everything just kind of came together really quickly. Some songs take months. That song took a day. So it just flowed. It was like, hey, okay, you just go with it,
Let me ask you a question. Before I play this, we're on the subject now. When you're in the studio, are you fully rehearsed before you even attempt to start to record the song, or do you do it on the fly? In other words, you know the song, but I know there are some music engineers, and there are also some composers. I know one from After Seven, and when he has a vocalist, he doesn't want to even tell her the lines to the song until she's in the studio. And then he plays the music for them and says, okay, go into the sound booth now, and he gives her the lyrics that go with the music, and he just has it recorded. Then he breaks it into words. Do this word over again. Sing it a few different ways, and then he puts the whole thing together from pieces and scraps, and it's marvelous. He doesn't want people rehearsed. He wants it raw.
I get that. And sometimes we do it that way, but usually that happens when we're just short on time. It's like, look, it's a busy family. We have 2 little kids. We can only record after they go to bed. And, and usually at night, by the time they go to bed, we're just like wiped out anyway. And so, you load up on the caffeine, you come into the studio. And so when you know that you have a limited amount of time to hit something, I try to know what I'm doing, at least have a really strong idea of what I want to do before going in, and then just hit it. Now, if I know that I have like hours, like 6 hours to work on this or whatever, then I'll let's just feel it and be spontaneous with it. So it really depends on timing.
Okay, so you do that sometimes. You just knock it out. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's go. Let me go and play Off the Cuff now, because I love this song. Like I said, too. A couple of these songs are my favorites. So here we go. I muted myself during the song. I didn't want to make any noise. I apologize. You know, you said earlier, and I picked up on that, that you like to do feel good music. And, you know, that off the cuff is a feel good song, you know, and so is Thrill Ride. And I think, you know, that really is something I think the audience appreciates too. It's hard to feel good a lot of days lately, and it's 110 degrees for 20 straight days in Phoenix. You know?
Yeah.
So, you know, hearing some feel good music is, you know, people need it. It really makes them, gives them a whole different outlook. It's a wonderful thing that you bring to people. You know, it's just it's a blessing for a lot of people. You know, I wanted to ask you this question also, and this is something that I think would be helpful to a lot of young musicians out there. Is there something that you discovered during your career up to this point that for any aspiring virtuoso that could help them to make a living as a full-time professional musician? Is there anything you can think of? Any advice you can give them?
Ooh, you have to keep going. You have to keep going. You have to learn the business. You have to network a lot and keep going even when you hear no. That's really what it is. And allow yourself some time and give yourself some grace, because you know this industry, it's hard. Um, you know, everybody is going for it, guns blazing, and you know, it's not easy. You can have the best music on the planet. You can be the best musician out there. You can play all those calculus chords and everything else, and still not make it. So you know, there are a lot of non-musical skills that you have to employ in order to get to a point where you can, you know, make a living from this. So, you know, it's a lot, but the main thing is you have to keep going, because the minute you stop, you fail.
You know, that's such great advice. You know, I keep going back to my mother because she had this kind of folk wisdom all the time. My mother used to tell me, if you hear somebody tell you no, they don't mean no. They just mean you haven't given them a reason to say yes. That applies to musicians. Because you hear no, you, it takes a number of no's to get to yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's not a bad thing. It's just part of the experience, you know. I mean, if everybody said yes, you would never feel challenged.
Right.
You wouldn't even, you couldn't get any better. There'd be no reason to.
Yeah.
You know? So, you know, I think the advice you just laid out is really important, to keep at it. You know, it takes time.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's terrific advice. You know, being an instrumentalist, I don't know if you think it's easier or harder than being a vocalist. I'm not sure how you think about that at all. But what challenges have you faced as a woman and an instrumentalist? There aren't that many that, you know, that really lead bands and have successful careers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so, you know, what challenges did you face? Did you face any, or did it just always come naturally to you?
You know, it was always, I've always managed to surround myself with supportive people and people who encouraged growth and everything. So in that regard, while I was, you know, really, not that I'm not in the trenches now, but I mean, like in those, you know, you got to drag, you know, 1,000 pounds of equipment with you for, you know, a 5-hour gig and get paid $100. But,
Yeah.
you know, those, you know, you, it, it was a very level playing field, whether you were male or female, because everybody was mad that they were dragging this stuff out and everything, but at the same time they were just happy to be able to do something that they were, you know, that they love to do. Now, as I got further and further into my career, and started working with, you know, in different situations and different bands and stuff like that, and there became less and less women along the way. At first, I didn't really notice it, but you know, then you know, it was very subtle, you know, and it was enough where I can just kind of just like, whatever. You know, they see this little girl coming up here. You know, I'm only 5'5", and I play a flute, and so it's like, instantly it's either going to be curiosity or dismissal. That's usually,
Interesting.
what comes out. And I am very feisty anyway. So if I smell the dismissal coming, you kind of get, and and then it usually just takes care of itself, because at the end of the day they want to know if you can play. Can you play? And most days I can, but I have my moments. But yeah, so if you can play, then suddenly you're just a musician. Gender is taken out of it. Background is taken out of it. You're there. You're playing. You have the respect of the people who are sharing the stage with, and you just go. So there's that aspect. But then, of course, you're looking at the festival flyers, and you see 19 men and 2 women, and it's like,
Yeah.
all right, well, we got work to do. But
Well, that's what I was kind of referring to. It's doubly hard being a woman, and being an instrumentalist, because they expect women to be vocalists. That's
Yeah,
the
they do.
expectation. Yeah.
Yeah, I can have the flute in my hand, and they're asking, "Oh, you gonna sing something?"
Yeah. See, exactly. So it's kind of difficult. When would you say you had your breakthrough moment where you said, "Hey, I can really do this. I can be somebody." When was that breakthrough moment when you thought, "I really have now made it to the next level"?
Mm. That there have been many moments, like that are, kind of incrementally, but I think it was probably when I won the Jazz Music Award for Best Contemporary Artist, and I was really shocked, and I'm still trying to allow myself to accept that. But yeah, I think that was like, because it's done by industry people, my peers and everything, and it felt really good. I felt validated, that yes, I can actually play, and yes, I'm doing something right.
Wonderful. Yeah, that must have felt really great. And it's hard to accept sometimes. You work so hard to get it, and then when you get it, you say, "What did I do to deserve this?"
Right. Yeah.
After all the hard work you put in, you start second guessing yourself. And the other problem is the next thing you think about is, now what do I do?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How do I top this? It's like when somebody gets a Grammy, and after that, all they're thinking about is, how do I get another one?
Right.
It can destroy you. It can destroy you.
It really can. That's when you really have to dig deep and stay true to yourself. Don't chase the glitter. Just stay with what makes you love music.
Yeah, exactly. And we've been talking about this really most of the night. It's be true to yourself and love what you do.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do that, doors open for you. And sometimes doors close, but other ones open. And you have to always, and a lot of it sometimes is beyond your control. Like, when it used to be, again, I'm going to date myself, one of the biggest things about the 70s and 80s, you can do a 10-minute song on the radio. That was unheard of before. Now they want 2 minutes. Now the average song now is 2 minutes. And how do you tell a story if you're a storyteller? How do you tell a story in 2 minutes?
Yeah.
And so sometimes there are challenges beyond your control. You just and you have to shift gears, and it's a difficult. You said it before. It's a very difficult business. There's no question about it. I was in financial services, and everyone thinks that's a terrible, hard business. It pales in comparison to music. Music is a tough business.
Yes.
So so when you start opening those doors like you have, it just says a lot about you. And that's.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just that I'm stubborn, but.
Yeah, but you have a gift that you never let go of, and you tenaciously pursue that gift, and that's what it takes. There we know this, and you kind of alluded to it. There are a lot of artists out there who are very talented, but they just don't make the commitment. It's not like they don't have the talent; they
Mhm.
just don't have the energy, or they don't have the mindset, to say, God gave me this. I got to do something with it. I just can't deny it. And so a lot of people languish, and so it takes so much more than music in a business sense. It takes a certain level of emotional commitment. It's not, only the ones that really succeed have that. It's not an accident. So that's another part I think for any young artist to think about. It's like you mentioned earlier, stay committed.
Mhm.
It'll take time, but stay committed.
Yeah.
So here's my next question. Just change the subject and lighten it up a little bit here. If you can pick, and you kind of alluded to this earlier, if you could pick any songwriter, singer, or musician from any era, and I asked you earlier about a contemporary, but from any era in any decade, and don't tell me Stevie Wonder again. So who would you pick from any era? It could be classical, it could be, who would you pick um, that you would that you'd like to collaborate with?
Oh. Oh, you know what? And that's so hard. That is so hard,
It is hard.
because I mean, there are people. Gosh,
I
Tina
well, what?
Turner. Tina Turner.
Wow. Okay. All right. I had Eric Roberson on last week, and I asked Eric that question. Was it Eric? No, it was Dwelle. I had Dwelle on,
Hmm.
and I asked him that question, and Dwelle came out with Minnie Riperton. That's the person he'd love to collaborate with. I never in a million years would have thought of Dwelle and Minnie Riperton. But that's who he said I would have loved to have collaborated with her, and he started talking about what she brought to music. You
Hmm.
know, so when you go back and think about who you'd want to collaborate with, what made that special? Why that pick?
Tina Turner was just a trailblazer, you know, and she had a way of getting any kind of song, and it really didn't matter what she was singing. You could tell that it was just coming from the deepest corner of her soul when she sang it, and her approach to life and her approach to adversity. I mean, this woman went from R&B to rock at age 44
Yeah, yeah,
and killed it. And so, I mean, who does that? And why would I not want to be around that? I need to get some of that on me. So
rub a little of that on me.
yeah.
Yeah, somebody just reminded me when you mentioned Tina Turner. Somebody that I really love and I've had on also, and she's wonderful, Macy Gray.
Mm.
And Macy, she never met a genre she didn't like.
Hmm.
There's not a she'll do gospel, she'll do alternative, I mean, but when she takes a song, you hear about when people do covers, they make it their own. She doesn't just make it her own, she makes it new. It's
Hmm.
like it's like she created the song. It's often better than the original. And that's exactly what Tina Turner would do.
Hmm.
When she sang Proud Mary, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
it was better than anything. It was better than the original. And Creedence is no slouch band by any means. You know,
Right.
um,
Yeah.
yeah. But I think it's a good pick. I think that would be a great collaboration. I
Yeah.
like that one. So I want to play the last song tonight. I want to play Full Court Press.
Hmm.
And how did you name that? It's a basketball term.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that was my husband all day. It's full court press. I said, okay, okay. And so then, and then we're like, well, are we going to do a video? Does it have to be basketball? Because again, I'm 5'5". Okay.
You're not going to dunk, that's for sure.
No, there will be no dunking over here, not without a trampoline or something. So, so it was kind of a running joke, and then it just stayed.
Okay, well, it's a great song, and the three songs we're playing tonight, they all have different tempos, and I like the mix of the three, and these are all off Thrill Ride. These are all songs. Okay, terrific. Everybody, and by the way, we have 67,000 people. Nope, that's not true. 72,000 people have checked in tonight.
Oh wow, that's awesome!
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, by tomorrow, I can let you know where they're from. I can't tell now, but they're clicked onto the station. So you have a nice big audience out there listening to you. Probably a lot of your fans and new fans too.
Thank you for listening, everybody.
So let's play Full Court Press for everybody, and then we can talk a little more. I love it.
Thank
I
you.
love it. You know, it's just, it is such feel good music. You're absolutely right about all of that. You know, we're getting near the end of the show, and I want to ask you just a couple more questions, if you don't mind.
Mhm.
Maybe you can stick around after the show is over for a couple of minutes so we can talk. But when all is said and done, Ragan, and you're only at the midpoint of your career, you still have a long way to go. But with all the music ahead of you, what do you want to have people think about when they remember your music or think about your music as your legacy?
Mhm.
What do you want them to say about it or think about it?
That we are consistent and good and make people feel good. You know, just something that okay, I know I'm going to feel good after I listen to this album. Whatever album it is, I know, and it's consistent, it is, I'm going to enjoy it. And just it's that consistency, you know.
Right. Okay, yeah, that's great. That's great. We talked about this a little bit earlier. I mentioned Grateful Dead. I know I played the same song twice, but sometimes people like to hear the same song over and over again, and people or hear the same style consistently because they know what to expect and they can relax and feel good listening to it. So, I think the consistency that we're talking about is really important, and it's also building a body of work. You're building a nice body of work. I had Mesa on. She's done an album a year for 20 years.
Wow.
Now, first of all, how do you do it? And second of all, how do you maintain the consistency?
Right.
It's just not easy. And that's, but then when you're leaving a body of work, and that's what you're creating. You're having a seventh LP coming out, and, you have seven more ahead of you. So you have, 14, 15 LPs out there. That's a body of work. You're not a one-hit wonder. And, it's something that your fans can always go back to, and they always find something to listen to. So I think the consistency is a good point. I think you made a very good point there. Um, I want to just thank you so much for being on the show.
No, thank you for having me.
I love having you on, and maybe you can tell your listeners something that you can sum up for them about the love that you have for your music and the love you have for them. Is there anything you want to say to all your fans out there? That's a final word for you.
Yeah, I am just so appreciative of everyone who has downloaded, streamed, listened at somebody else's house. Just if you have been listening and you like it and you appreciate it, I appreciate you. I mean, it is just so, I wouldn't be here without people listening, So I am so grateful and appreciative, and it's all love and positive energy.
Wonderful. Yeah, and I know how busy you are, and I so appreciate you taking the time out tonight to come back on the show. And I want to have you on again. I'll wait for you before your next project comes out, your next release. We'll have you back on, and maybe I can get an exclusive for a couple of songs and play it for all your fans out there. But I want to have you back, and again, it's been a real pleasure, and I just really appreciate you being on our show.
Oh no, thank you so much. I'm honored. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'll say goodnight now, but stick around so we can talk.